Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
One of the biggest things in the PharmD MBA journey is it's uncertain where I kind of will end up because there's a lot of options and routes I've planned for myself. So, keeping that, balancing that futuristic with optimistic and living in the present moment, that's going to be something I'm going to have to take forward and reflect on.
Hello and welcome to the Career Boosters podcast, episode 11 of season 2. My goodness gracious. Tiffany is now having to use both hands in
Both hands, but in a different way.
Yeah. Harmony, developer, relator, positivity, activator, individualization, belief, responsibility, empathy, and maximizer. Why the heck are we starting with a whole bunch of random words? Well, the top 5 or the first 5 were Tiffany's strengths, and the second 5 were mine. Today, we have a very fun episode where we get to talk all things strengths. We get to talk about all of the key elements of our brand, but most importantly, our strengths. And when we think about these strengths, they're key to growth, development, and really just peak performance. This week in class with MBA students, we first had them do the Gallup's CliftonStrengths assessment. They came away with their top 5 strengths or themes, which I'm sure Tiffany's going to educate you on at some point throughout this podcast. And then it came time to learn about those strengths. We took them through some really fun activities to help them learn about their superpowers. And today we have one of those students joining us, Kush Patel, a very unique MBA student that's doing both the MBA and his pharmacy degree at the same time. So Kush, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And the first question we have is, what's the story behind your decision to embark on an MBA journey?
Well, thank you guys for having me. I just wanted to say it was actually really exciting when you approached me about it, and I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. So, thanks once again for having me here. The story behind my decision to kind of be on the MBA journey. So going a little bit backwards, my parents own we run a family business back in Calgary. Even when we were back home in India, my dad and my grandpa essentially had like a little bit of they did construction a little bit. So, business has always been kind of there within my family. But when I joined the PharmD program in 2021, I knew that there was a combined degree. I knew there was a PharmD MBA degree. And, I'll talk about this later on, but one of my strengths being futuristic, I had already kind of planned to go and combine kind of pharmacy, healthcare, technology, and business essentially. But I never really looked into it that much. I just kind of came from a kind of family business background essentially. And also in PharmD, we didn't really learn about business that much. We have like a couple courses here and there, but they're really, really kind of, it's like a lecture or two. But I'm always curious. I'm like, I had a passion for healthcare, technology, and business. So I thought, how can I bridge that gap? And I never really considered doing a business degree even after PharmD, actually. Like I knew that there was a joint degree, but I thought, we'll see like in the future, that is a way I want to go. And then in my second year, I joined a pharmacy software startup. And that was like kind of new space with, minor ailments and all that. So I thought, okay, this is a good first step. And then when I was coming to closer to my degree, I thought, okay, it would be foolish of me to not pursue the PharmD MBA degree because and it was also a year as well. So I thought, okay, let's do it because I'm eager to learn about it. And I think, there's so much to learn in the world. Like there's just so much, but we can't learn all of it at once. And there's like phases in life where you learn certain things. Sometimes you want to learn something earlier, but there's just like a time, I believe. And I think now is the time. So I thought, let's apply for the MBA and let's find a way to connect that interest I have in business, healthcare, and technology. So here we are now.
And I love that you have already given us a spoiler alert into your top 5 strengths, just in even why you're here, which I think points to why these are so important, that they show up for us, and knowing what they are and knowing how they show up and how to use them is really powerful.
Mhm.
So let's start there. Tell us what your top 5 CliftonStrengths are. How, and layer on top of that, you already knew about this before yesterday's class. For some students, it was the first time they've ever heard of CliftonStrengths. You actually took this a little while ago. So tell us when you took it, what you already knew about it, and what your top 5 are.
Yeah, so I'll start off with my top five. So my first one is Relator. My second one is Includer. My third one is Restorative. My fourth one is Futuristic, and my fifth one is Positivity. And I actually did the Clifton Strengths assessment in my last year, like so previous year of my PharmD. We had this leadership course that I took in the summertime, and we were supposed to do this assessment. So we did this assessment, and going into it, I honestly did not know what it was. But after taking it, after speaking about it with my professor who's teaching the leadership course, I understand that they're like the top five strengths that like unique to us, and there's 34 talents essentially, and with our top five, there's like 33 million combinations essentially that it can develop. And I was like, you don't think about that. Like you don't realize there's that many. If someone were to ask me how many combinations, I would probably say like thousands, but in millions, that's really incredible to see. And talking about strengths, like oftentimes we're just, on a day-to-day grind, we're just so focused on our, like, essentially, how can I improve myself? How can I become a better individual? How can I find my weaknesses and kind of make them better and turn them into a strength? But we so forget that, hey, there are strengths that we already have that we've developed. And first of all, what are they? And when I did this Clifton strength last year, I didn't really know that these were my top five strengths. But when I read them, when I came to understand, I was like, wow, like I was actually really, it was really interesting. I was really surprised. So, yeah.
So you mentioned your top five. You have, so let's just back up for people who don't know. There are 34 strengths or talents that you could have, of which, of course, you have a top five. Within those 34, there are four different buckets that they fall into. And
Mhm.
you have three of the four buckets represented in your top five. And so all of those 34 fall into either relationship building, strengths, executing, influencing, and strategic thinking. And so you have three: relationship building and executing and a strategic thinking. I'm curious because you already mentioned this. Let's go back to the futuristic one. Tell me how that played into, because you've done a little bit, your decision perhaps about the MBA, but where else have you seen just futuristic in and of itself show up?
So just talking about it in my kind of day-to-day life, like, I love living in the moment, but there's always thoughts going on in my head where I'm like, what next in the future? And now that being said, I know that, living in the present is probably it is the best thing to do. And the only thing we can do with our future is to welcome it. But that futuristic strength of mine, it's like, um, whether it's in the MBA, which I knew that I wanted to do something in business, or in pharmacy. I when I was in my BSc, I had a few options as to what I want to do in healthcare, and it was in healthcare. But now I'm going to just rewind a little bit back to grade 12. In grade 12, honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do in university. I was like definitely not futuristic at all. I had always thought about what the options were, and I actually applied to engineering, and I got into engineering. And last minute, within 2 months, I sat down with my dad and I kind of changed gears and said, okay, let me actually think about it. And I think it was at that moment where I understood that, hey, like thinking about what I want to do in the future or just in light, just in general, I think it's really important because it kind of paves a path. Now, doesn't mean that you necessarily have to walk that path because there's so many uncertainties, right? But just knowing it's more clear. And my dad would tell me just to make sure that it's clear, you have a path. Since then, I think I see it so much in life. I actually practice it probably every day. Like, I'm thinking about now what kind of route I want to take after I'm done all my degrees, even though I still have 2 years left. So that's where that futuristic strength of mine is constantly playing. I'm having these ideas and being so optimistic that, oh, like the future's bright. It's going to be great. And that kind of ties in with a bit of my positivity kind of strength. So yeah, that's how I kind of got that.
So cool that you're like tying things together already. When we think about skilling up strengths, it's okay, first we need to know and understand them, but then we need to pair them up together and see how they can build even more of like a superpower. And you're doing that already, which I think is spectacular. You made a quote and you said, the only thing we can do with the future is welcome it. How beautiful is that? And for somebody to have futuristic and have that approach to things, sky's the limit for you. I think that's so amazing. But so we've defined futuristic. We've looked at the definition of that. You talked about positivity. When you first read your report, though, and you saw these definitions of these things, these words, I always think about when I look at this report the first time, it's probably very overwhelming. It was overwhelming for me. But when you first read the report and the definitions, what were your reactions to that?
it was actually a mixed reaction. It was interesting how when I saw positivity, I was like, oh, I can see that. When I saw futuristic, I could see that. But when I read the words like restorative or relator, I was like, what is that? What does that really mean? And I didn't know what that meant. It was just like a word to me. And when I looked into it, when I looked into the report, then I was actually more like interested. I was like, that actually really is defining who I am. And I may have not known that. I knew that that is who I am in one way or another. And I do see myself doing that when certain actions and decisions and just in life in general, or my behavior towards others. But I didn't know that they're like strengths of mine, essentially. I just thought I was like good at that, but I didn't know it is a strength of mine. So it was really interesting because it really laid down the foundation of what my strengths were, and knowing what they are, I'm able to carry them with me all the time. And that's, I think, it's such an important thing to do because, as I was mentioning you, we often just forget to, you know, focus on our strengths or even know what our strengths are. So yeah.
Let's just tease apart the word talent and strengths because we've been talking about this and there is a distinct difference, and we went through this in class. So, a talent is a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving, which we often misunderstand about ourselves. We think everybody is kind of the same way we are. So, we kind of miss the fact that we have these unique talents and not everybody thinks the same way we do or feels the same way we do. But a talent to become a strength has to have this thing of investment. So if you take a talent, you multiply it by some sort of investment, that's how you get a strength. So we all actually have our top 5 talents. We know what we are naturally good at. It's
Mhm.
up to us to invest in them. So I'm curious, if you look at your top 5, where have you seen yourself investing in them, even if you didn't realize it in the moment?
Um, I think I invested a lot in Relator and positivity. Um, because, coming from like I live in a like really big family. I think I've mentioned that a couple times to Tiffany. And Relator has been like I can easily, let's say, being a relator, I could, you know, make those close relationships with everybody, especially let's say just speaking with my family members. But I never really like did that. I just thought it was overwhelming. I was like, wow, like there's just so much going on all the time. But I had to first of all understand what that meant. And throughout the years, being the spiritual individual that I am, I kind of tied it in together by understanding that, first of all, I have to start within before I go outside. If I want to start making close relationships outside in the world, whether, being a healthcare provider or, in the business kind of realm, I have to first look within. And I try to practice that. I try to invest my time and make those close relationships with my grandparents, actually. And that really helped a lot. That I try to understand how each family member is different and what is unique about them. How can I be a better brother, son, grandson, and what do I have to do? So understanding their strengths and their kind of interests and all that kind of helped me in that way. And also positivity. I wouldn't consider myself as a positive person like back in 2019 or before that. Um, like I was positive in some aspects, but when it came to practicing it almost every day, I did not do that. But after I was in a motorcycle accident in 2019, and that kind of changed like a lot of things for me. And one of the biggest things was I knew I was spiritual, but I didn't really realize how spiritual I was and how much time I had invested growing up being spiritual. And that kind of made me practice my positivity like almost every day because of what I was going through in the recovery phase and everything. And now it's at a point where I almost practice it every day. And it's like in any negative situation, I try to find the positive. I try to have an optimistic outlook. And that's where I kind of see myself with those two specifically, where I invest a lot of time and I continually like try to refine them because it's like, without that practice, it's just will kind of go, it'll just kind of dissipate, right? So,
It's like that habit forming kind of thought, right? And I think we all have to go through those things. And sometimes we're pushed into it through moments of whether it's trauma or whether it's joy or whatever that is. But I think the reflection of it, just it's you talked about a really you start within before you kind of go out, and that was really beautiful. It was what a statement. And you talked about getting to know even your grandparents through that relator strength. By the way, this is a side note. I have had students come to me like, I don't want to be a realtor. I'm like, it's not realtor, it's relator. It's it's quite funny to see people kind of be like, I don't know what that means, but it is that one-to-one connection, and it's the beauty of like really drawing somebody in and asking beautiful questions. We did an activity in class where you had to write with your non-dominant hand and then with your dominant hand. It's a very simple activity, but students' reactions often are very visceral, very polarizing. Tell us about how you experience that activity and how you relate that to kind of strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just laughing because it was fun for me because I'm ambidextrous, so it wasn't as challenging. And the reason I'm able to when I was back in India, essentially I was a lefty by, just I had practiced with my left hand. And then when I went to school, actually, like they made me write with my right hand. So they would force me to, and I actually don't know why that was. Maybe it's just because majority of people might write with the right hand. So it's just that's the norm essentially. Never understood it, but oh well, it must have been, right? And then when I moved to Canada, when my family moved, I just felt comfortable writing with my left hand. So I would just practice more. But sorry, tying it back into the activity. Um, it wasn't as challenging, but I felt really joyful because to me, it wasn't really about like writing those 5 sentences in 30 seconds, get it done with. It was more about enjoying my time writing them. It's like with my right hand, I'm writing and I was enjoying it because I was like, wow, I haven't written with my right hand in quite some time, but I'm able to do it. So I felt really happy and feel really joyful. But then with my dominant hand, I felt a bit anxious because then that it sets that expectation that like, oh, I actually have to get those five, But I tried to practice once again my positivity or, being in the moment and just say, just enjoy your time. It's not a competition. That's yeah.
Just to clarify for anybody listening, if you were to take a piece of paper and in your non-dominant hand, write a short sentence as many times as you can in about 30 seconds and just see what you feel when you write with a hand that you don't write with very often. And then with your dominant hand, write the same sentence, same amount of time, and see the difference in feeling. And that's a really simple way to juxtapose the natural way of thinking, feeling, behaving, the dominant hand, the thing you use all the time without even thinking versus the discomfort. And there were so many other words that students used on what it feels like to do something that you're not naturally gifted in, and just to sense the difference. And why would we spend the time to take it's for me, it's my left hand. To get better at writing with my left hand would take me a long time to be as good as my right. And so if I needed to, if there was something I had to do with my left hand, I would find Kush, who is ambidextrous, who can probably do it with his left hand. I wouldn't bother spending my energy there. So that just where do you put your energy is a big part of this. We also did an activity, and I would love to hear what you said for these, called Love and Crazy, where we had everybody talk about one of their top five strengths they love and why, and one of the top five strengths that perhaps might drive somebody else crazy. What did you share, Kush?
So my strength that I feel people love it, I love first of all, is positivity. And the reason being is because it has given me so much, and I think it's always kept me connected to myself, to others, and just helps create that aura and that energy. And even sometimes like when somebody else is feeling down, if you're just positive in just in the littlest way, whether it's like giving them a positive, optimistic smile, like I know I'm labeling a smile, but it just makes them feel so it makes them feel heard in a way. It makes them feel welcomed. It makes them feel like I matter. And I've actually that experience. I'm speaking on it because I've had that in my PharmD when in second year when we came back from COVID. It was online learning, and everybody has their small groups. They form their small groups, and um, you know there's always a couple people who are kind of not in a group, and you just kind of see them as soon as the lecture's done, they leave. And it's been a moment where I just simply smiled, and then now we're like really, really good friends actually. And yeah, but the one that might drive people crazy is the futuristic one. And it's because I always tell like myself and those that I love and care about, and just in general, like I'm a firm believer of living in the moment and just welcoming the future, as I also mentioned. But because I'm always kind of optimistic about the future, planning for whatever it may have been, it sets those expectations. And when those expectations are not met, now I know that I'm not setting those expectations, but for the others, it might be that, oh, he wants to do this. And if it doesn't happen, it kind of, you know, makes him feel like, oh, it's like, he's an underachiever, he overpromised, etc. So I think that's what drives people crazy. But yeah.
Good for you. And I think what's so cool about this activity is you may find somebody that, you love this about yourself, and somebody that may drive other people crazy, right? Like, and it's so fascinating. There's a light side and a dark side to pretty much everything that we do, but strengths are no different. And one of the a maximizer is one of mine. That is like taking something from good to great. That makes people so annoyed because sometimes good enough is okay, right? Like, and that should be all right for most people, but for Paul, maybe not so much. So, there can sometimes be a correlation between our values and our strengths. Do you see any connections between our class on values and this one on strengths?
Yeah, 100%. Like one of my values was spirituality, and the other one was family, which I learned after speaking with Tiffany that it actually might be love. And it actually enlightened me in a way as well. And when I thought about it, I was like, maybe this is where it is. But I think spirituality and positivity, I think they do tie in a lot. There's a lot of correlation, especially for me, because um, I think they go hand in hand because I'm a firm believer of everything happened for a reason. And spirituality, it's more of like, believing that there's a higher power and there's something there to guide me in life and pave that path. Now, as long as I'm working towards my goals, my dreams, my passion, that higher power essentially will guide me. Now, that is a positive kind of outlook. And it can be a pessimistic outlook, but I think it ties a lot into that spirituality that I values because even in experiences that I've had in life, I just felt like they go hand in hand because if I'm trying to be spiritual, but if I'm pessimistic, it'll be very, very difficult for me to kind of first of all understand how I'm even going to tackle certain situations. Another value of mine was, as I mentioned, family, like slash love. And I think that connects me to relator and includer. I think everybody needs love in this world, including ourselves. Sometimes we're so busy in giving back to others that sometimes we forget to give to ourselves. So having that value of loving to myself and other people and relating it to like relator and includer, I always believe like if let's say I have a startup idea or something like that, the first thing I can think of is going to my friends and saying, "Hey guys, like this is so cool. Like, should we work on this?" And there's that other route where you just kind of keep it to yourself and you just want to do it yourself. But I believe that if we grow together, if we achieve things together, it's more fun. It makes life more fun. And I think that's how they kind of tie into each other. And also love, like if I tie it into healthcare, let's say, um, when I'm dealing with patients, there's so much that they're going through. And sometimes just, being kind and showing them that love that they matter, that, hey, I'm here, I hear you. And to me, you matter. It doesn't matter if it's for 5 minutes or you need 30 minutes of my time. And that's happened. Somebody came in for a vaccine the other day and they were really, really nervous and they were really scared. And I simply spent like 30 minutes just talking to them about like, I actually asked them to explain, like I play cricket myself, but I said, I found out they also like cricket and stuff. So I asked them, hey, can you tell me a bit more about the sport and like what do you like and what do you not like and what was your best tournament you've played? Like I kind of got them, I kind of made them feel calm and it was supposed to take 5 minutes, but it took me 30. But oh well, at least they felt like they mattered. And then they were so comfortable after. And I wanted to make sure that they have a comfortable kind of experience, right? So yeah.
Mhm. It never ceases to amaze me how when students talk about their strengths when they really understand them and what it means to them, and they talk about their values when they really understand them and what it means to them, and how much of a Venn diagram overlap that there is. In fact, it's usually almost like one circle on top of the other circle. So each of those, those examples, I heard your strengths and I heard the values as you have languaged them to me. So now that you're on the MBA journey and your PharmD journey and you know a little bit more, we've got a little bit more knowledge behind your strengths and values. How are you going to point those towards your journey right now?
Well, first of all, like this conversation that we've had, and even in our class yesterday, I think it's become such a strong, valuable memory for me. In the future, I'm gonna constantly remind myself of, what I've learned in class, what I've learned right now, what we've shared, and also keeping my strengths in mind. And once, like personally speaking, once I get married and once I have kids, life starts to get more busy. But I want to make sure that I constantly keep these strengths in mind and connect it with whatever I'm going through in life. And constantly finding ways to better the way, like just thinking like, how can I improve myself? And thinking, okay, these are my weaknesses, but these are the strengths that I've learned and that I know of myself. And, some strengths that are not so powerful, let's say, and that some things I haven't really worked on that much, but it is like, the strengths report that you see, working on those as well. And also one of the biggest things in in the PharmD MBA journey is like, it's uncertain where I kind of will end up because there's a lot of options and routes I've planned for myself. So, keeping that, balancing that futuristic with optimistic and living in the present moment, that's going to be something I'm going to have to take forward and reflect on as well.
Mm. There's a lot that we could keep talking about strengths. It's one of the most favorite topics for Paul and I. However, our time is running short and we need to get to a lightning round. You ready, Kush?
Yes.
All right. 3 quick questions, 3 gut answers. What part of your career story has given you the biggest boost?
Uh, Joining the first ever startup that I've joined. Yeah.
Very
Mhm.
cool. What do you wish you had learned sooner?
One job goes, another may come. Once life goes, another won't come.
Mm. We could like put a pin on that for a moment, but I won't. It's a lightning round. Okay, so service is something that is a core value of Paul and mine's, and I would say shows up in our strengths as well. And so we're always curious to hear how service is going to show up for you in the coming week.
Oh, actually perfect because I'm actually going back to Calgary because my dad works out of town, and my mom is busy with her business. So my grandparents have a lot of appointments, and I have all my grandparents living with me. So I'm actually taking them to their appointments. So for the next like Thursday and Friday, I'm going to be just serving them essentially.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely. I love that you've talked about your grandparents twice now in this
Yeah.
podcast. Okay, Paul's random question. What do you got, Paul?
First off, how nice are you? Oh my goodness gracious. Just such a kind person. Brand is very important to me. Values, strengths, areas of growth, motivations, emotional intelligence, all of those pieces. Kush, if you had the whole day free to yourself, what would you do? What's one activity that you would do? We want to learn something else other than positivity, relator, all of these things. What's one thing outside of the world of business and things like that that you love to do?
Painting.
Mm.
Yeah. I love sketching and painting and
Oh,
making beats actually, like
oh, cool.
for fun. So
Awesome.
those are two different things, but like yeah, like
The
yeah.
artistic side of things coming out. I love it. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Very cool.
Mm.
Very cool. Kush, thank you so much for sharing just so much of yourself, but the ability to weave in your journey, past, present, future, your values, your strengths, who you are as a person, what matters to you, and just the most beautiful picture that demonstrates why truly understanding what we are naturally talented at, what our gifts are, why that matters, why it matters to us, and why it matters to other people. Your Venn diagram overlap of you started with healthcare, tech, and business, right? And then we talked just about a whole bunch of other things that overlap for you. And that center, that brand that Paul just talked about is very, very strong. It's very kind. It is service oriented. It is spiritual. It is here for others, but also here for yourself. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your strengths. And it's going to be a lovely rest of the journey to get to walk with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys so much. And honestly, I love you guys even doing this podcast because I think it's going to help. It already has helped so many people and it will help so many other people and students as well. So from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate you guys doing this. And thank you for also inviting me here to speak on strengths.
You're welcome. All right, key takeaways. There were many. Early in the episode, for me, what stood out, and Paul repeated it, so I'm going to repeat it again. This is getting like 3 underlines, is when he talked about the future and that the only thing we can do with the future is welcome it. And I think we often coach around, I'll speak for myself, but I think Paul's going to nod, that we often coach around anxiety for the future, catastrophizing, right? Only assuming that the worst might happen in the future rather than considering actually what is the best way that the future might work out, because that's equally possible. And there is such power in a positive futuristic outlook and what that can do for mindset, which really just translates into so many things. And so it was just a beautiful way to put it, that the only way we can observe the future is to truly welcome it positively. So that stuck out to me. Paul?
Yeah, that was cool for me too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible with quotes and to watch somebody that's really great at using quotes and using it through
Mm-hmm.
conversation, like man, I'm like I got something to learn here. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought that was really great. The other quote, "Start within before I go out." I thought that was really fascinating. I had to write it
Mm-hmm.
down, couldn't remember it, but I think that again, just a beautiful talk around introspection. I think what stood out to me from a key takeaway was First of all, like knowledge of strengths and knowledge of these themes, but you have to put time and effort into it. And Kush had done that, and that's so cool. But you know that there's more effort and more time that's going to be put into it. It's that investment piece. When I think about the strengths, and normally you, when we are doing our presentation, you kind of focus on that. But all I just get is this really great mental picture of just building the strength, building the Lego blocks to this superpower. And I think Kush has really done a great job at building that, and it's only going to get better and better. And so that's my key takeaway: is it takes time and it takes effort, and it's an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm. There was just so many more that we could highlight as well, but that one was lovely. And both you and I have taken the time and can see for ourselves what happens when you invest in that.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's our favorite topic. We could keep going, but we have another episode coming, and we're not entirely sure what it'll be because next week is reading week, so we get to pick our own topic. So we'll see what happens perhaps next week, but we will catch you next time we're here. See ya. Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.